Imagine a workplace where leaders don't just manage, but they inspire. Where team members and employees feel not just productive, but genuinely happy and fulfilled, and where trust is the foundation of every interaction. Today's guest on the Broker's Playbook podcast has dedicated his career to making this vision a reality. Phil Jewell, a seasoned leader who has served in the British, Canadian, and US armies, brings a unique perspective on leadership that cuts through the noise and complexity. After graduating from the prestigious military academy of Sandhurst, Phil transitioned to impactful roles within both the provincial and federal governments. Now, as the founder of Impact Leadership, he helps organizations tackle employee retention and engagement challenges by focusing on the basics: trust, character, and mindset. Phil believes that true leadership isn't about being the best. It's about bringing out the best in others. I'm Bobby Puim, your host of Broker's Playbook podcast today. Let's dive in. Phil, welcome to the Broker's Playbook podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. I think that our listenership needs to understand two things, first and foremost. Who is Phil Jewell?
Yeah.
And what is Impact Leadership?
Okay, love it. So Phil Jewell is the founder of Impact Leadership Development and Training. But honestly, who's Phil? I'm a father first, try to be a good spouse as well, and just try to be a good kind of family man. Originally born and raised in England, spent the first 30 years of my life there. My amazing Canadian wife woke up one day and said, "I'm done with you English people." She didn't use the word people. She said, "I'm going home, you coming with me?" And of course I said yes. And that's how I ended up in Canada in 2010. And now we live in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
It's amazing. I'm glad that you explained the accent for everybody quickly. Right? For those of our listenership listening on Spotify or what have you, right? No video. And we're like, oh, where's this man from?
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's a good point.
I love it. I love it. So a little bit about your journey. We know this, but you're a military man as well. So how many years in the military?
I was in the military 14 years in total between the British and Canadian, and actually served alongside the US in my final deployment. So a little bit of a varied experience and a varied journey along the way.
It's incredible. Yeah. Now take us to Impact Leadership.
Yeah.
Explain to us sort of, let's get into the transition, I suppose, from the military life, right, into utilizing the skills that you'd gained, right, learned, I suppose we would say, into what Impact Leadership is for you today.
That's a great question, and I like the word utilizing the skills. So, I left the military in 2016. I was very much enjoying my time in the military, but I couldn't be the family person I wanted to be. I couldn't be the father I wanted to be to my kids, and I couldn't be the spouse I wanted to be. And then I entered, the civilian world, if you like, and I found myself working alongside some very, very good leaders who unfortunately had never been given any sort of leadership training and development. And they were responsible for lots of people and lots of money. And I started to reflect on my time in the Army, the British Army, the Canadian Army, and how much leadership training I'd been given. I went to the British Army's Royal Military Academy of Sandhurst, which is arguably one of the best leadership schools in the world. And I'd been exposed at a very young age to a lot of real leadership challenges. And I'd learned a lot, and I'd failed a lot. And I saw myself sat in the civilian world, working alongside other leaders, following other leaders, and trying to lead other people who had never been given any sort of training. And I thought, I'm leaving something behind here. Like, I'm not really living my true purpose. I have something to offer, and it's not doing this. And that's where the fire really started for Impact Leadership Development Training, which was, Friday night at the dining room table with a bottle of wine in 2019.
That's incredible, incredible. So then when we talk about this, I research the websites and do all of the deep dive for our show today. You talk a lot about going back to basics. Right. So if from the education through all of your experiences in the military, you take all of your learnings and put it into Impact Leadership, taking people back to basics to teach them how to become better leaders.
Exactly. I think we overcomplicate leadership, the word, leader and leadership. And I think the reason we do it is because we often confuse it with management. And we'll talk about, a management course in healthcare, a management course in education, or maybe even management in real estate, which are absolutely applicable, but that's management and not leadership. Management is processes and things, and leadership is about people. And I really believe we have to drill it down to its simplest form. We're humans with emotions, and it's as simple and as complex as that. And just to, answer the first part of the question, when I'm running my multi-week leadership development training courses, the first month, the first 6 weeks, people think, oh, it's going to be great. I'm going to get a guy and he's going to talk about, all his combat experience and leading soldiers and what it all means. I don't do any of that. I talk about looking in the mirror and leading ourselves. And we do a whole, host of courses around, really defining leadership for ourselves. What is emotional intelligence? Like, social intelligence, all those sort of aspects, because you can only lead others as far as you can lead yourself. Like there's a hard line in the sand, and we'll all spend countless hours and energy and money developing our technical skill sets, developing ourselves, when honestly, the cheapest but the hardest thing to do is to look in the mirror and to improve our self-awareness, because that is the showstopper for anyone becoming an effective leader.
Well said. That sounds very much like a mindset and skill component shift in anybody's life. So dive a little bit deeper for me then on some of the mindset shifts that you try to work with people on, that you've seen enacted in Impact Leadership with some of your followers.
No, that's a great question. And I truly believe, irrelevant of our profession, irrelevant of our industry, it is 90% mindset, 10% skill set. Like that defines our success, is 90% mindset. I'm not saying that technical competence and technical experience is not important. I'm not saying that extra 10% of skill set is not important. But if we do not have the mindset to overcome the fear, really, and to have that growth mindset, to be able to fail and understand that I am not a failure, and to understand that every journey, it's not win or lose, fail or succeed, get a transaction or not get a transaction. It's none of that. It's win and lose, fail and succeed, and fail again and succeed again. It's a journey. And I think, I always take it back to some of the true champions who we see in our celebrity world. I mean, LeBron James, arguably the male GOAT of all time. Yeah. I believe he was in 10 NBA championships. Do you know how many he won?
I think it's 4.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well done.
Yeah, I'm a sports guy.
Okay, and I didn't prep you on that. I was like, am I throwing you under the bus asking that? But exactly. Yeah. So the majority of his time, he was a loser. He lost 6 out of 10 times, because true champions know how to lose. They know how to fail. Like, I don't care about people knowing how to win. Like, that is just innate. We all know how to win. We all know how to celebrate. I watch my kids play sport. I watch my son play hockey, and he's 11 years old, and they're all like focused on their greatest celly, And it actually makes me a bit frustrated, because they're kids, you're having fun, do celly. But what I care about more is when somebody's made a mistake on the ice and the other team scored, what are you going to do then? Are you going to go up and tap them on the shin and say, don't worry about it, we're okay? I'm more interested in looking at that bench when they're 8-1 down and seeing what those kids are doing. And, taking that into a business perspective and an individual leadership perspective, that is when true leaders shine, when they show their real character, when they're failing, things aren't going well, but they still have that resilience to keep going.
I love your sports analogies, and I'd like to share one of my own.
Yeah.
Something you don't know about me is that I was a goaltender growing up playing hockey.
Oh my gosh.
So a little goalie, right?
Yeah, that's tough.
It's because I couldn't skate when I was really young, so I figured just standing there was going to be a thing, and then I was good at it, and then I stayed there. Yeah. But one of the better coaches that I ever had, it dawned on me one day, but because he sort of forced it into my head. Ready? A forward goes out on the ice, right, and they make a mistake, and there's 20,000 people in this arena, and 6 of those people know that forward just made a mistake. Yeah. It's almost nondescript, right? Yeah. You can barely tell unless you're an expert in this thing. A defenseman goes out there and makes a mistake, and 10,000 people might understand it, right? Oh, man, he just got beat going down the wall, and this is a problem all of a sudden. Yeah. But a goaltender makes a mistake. Wow. What happens? They shut the lights off. Yeah. They turn the music on. They go to commercial. They come back. There's still fireworks blowing up. And it takes a certain mindset at that point to be able to recalibrate and understand that while we just failed, not all is lost.
Exactly. That is a great analogy, actually, a great example. Yeah, you make a mistake as a goaltender, 20,000 people know you've made a mistake.
Not just 20,000 people. What if this is a nationally televised game, right? In the Stanley Cup final, the entire world knows that you've just made a mistake.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Such a great point. And that highlights why it's all about your mindset, because how you then progress through that rest of the game has absolutely nothing to do with your skill set. You have the skill set. You wouldn't be on the ice if you didn't have the skill set, but it's all about mindset. And I think it's about mindset in business, and it's about mindset in life.
Amazing. Phil, we're going to take a quick break, but after the break, we're going to come back and talk about what real leadership looks like in the real estate business. You down?
I'm down. Love it.
I love it. Welcome back to the Broker's Playbook podcast. We're still here with Phil Jewell today. Phil, I want to talk to you about going back to basics in business leadership. Let's get started with, we work in real estate. Yeah. This is how you and I have connected. Yeah. But you don't just work with real estate professionals. Your client base, your impact leadership school, your coursing and everything is actually really, really broadly set across many, many business structures, correct?
Exactly. And I think one of the reasons is I truly believe leadership is leadership is leadership. Because like I said before, you're leading people, humans with emotions. So irrelevant of the industry, irrelevant of the profession, the same principles apply. Like I'm working with, white collar law firms, blue collar manufacturing organizations, large real estate associations in the US. And all these different organizations and professions have exactly the same challenges and issues in their leadership roles, because it's all about people. And that is when we focus purely on leadership.
So let's pick a couple of those issues that you think are common across some of these business profiles, right? If we could stick to some real estate stuff for the Broker's Playbook followership, right? It would be amazing. But what are some of these common challenges that you're seeing with leaders at the highest level currently?
I think one of the biggest challenges is the way leadership is being portrayed through Hollywood and, the way leadership was played out in society, maybe over the last 20, 30 years and beyond, is giving us a false sense of what leadership is. And we feel like a leader is the center and a team is just an extension of that leader. A leader is calling all the plays, making all the plays, etc. I think that's completely a flawed concept, or a concept that does not serve us well now and absolutely will not serve us well in the future. Instead, I really embrace what I call the irrelevant leader. And that's about empowering, delegating, training, coaching, mentoring your team around you so that they can keep moving forward when you're not there. As a leader, you're simply an extension of the team. That team is not an extension of you. So in the real estate industry, that means if you're leading a team, you don't need to be involved in every conversation. You don't need to have oversight of every single thing that's happening in your business, in your team. Because a question I often ask people to reflect upon is to ask themselves this: how well could the team I lead, how well could the business I lead keep moving forward when I'm not there? And that tells you everything you need to know about the strength of your business, how resilient your business is, and really how effective you are as a leader.
Yeah, it's so amazing. Can you give us a specific example of someone or one of the organizations that you've worked with that was able to implement some of these tactics, this mindset into their business in order to accomplish what they were setting out to accomplish?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll give you two examples. I've often worked with smaller teams in the real estate industry, so teams of maybe 4 or 5, and where that leader is so central to everything that is happening that it is wearing them down and it is absolutely burning them out. And they're not creating a legacy, because a legacy is something that can live on when you're not the one driving it forward. And so I try to get to the heart of what they want to achieve, and often it's this legacy. And so I try to ask them to take a step back and to give space, to close the door, make themselves inaccessible, which is, that scares so many people. Yeah. I mean, real estate's 24/7, real estate's 24/7. Completely agree. I don't work within the industry, but I work with it, and I completely agree. It's 24/7. But who's not 24/7? We're not, as humans. Yeah. We are not 24/7. And if we're the ones handling everything that we're doing in our business, in our team, then it's only as effective as long as we're doing that. And so that's an example how I work with the real estate kind of teams, is to try to encourage them to let go a little bit, to hold people capable, not accountable. And there's a subtle difference in those two words, but I think it has a big impact.
That's amazing. A big theme in your work is trust. As a whole. Talk to us about building the trust to be able to close that door and hold people capable.
That's a great point. In fact, one of my defining messages is to give trust on day one. I actually don't believe that trust is earned. I think that's nonsense, BS. I just don't buy into that. I think we should give trust on day one, which scares so many people.
Yes.
But there's research out there that tells us that only 6% of the population actually lie. It's only 6% of the population we can't actually trust. So, I'm often saying that the rewards of the 94% outweigh the risks of the 6%. Unfortunately, we develop an individual leadership mindset. We develop protocols, procedures, policies within our businesses based on the people who have let us down, based on the 6% that we can't trust.
I was just going to ask you that. Where do you think that comes from? I see it a lot, right? Especially in real estate, because I feel like, I'm going to give this example. A real estate transaction is two-sided, and I feel like a lot of people forget that component to it. They only remember that component, that there is another party involved, another agent, a buyer or seller on the other side of the transaction when they get burnt. Right? So it's the most lasting of things. A lot of the leadership stuff that I see, I suppose, says things like fear is the more difficult one to get over. You will remember the things that hurt more. You're more scared of those than you are the successes in chasing those. You're more likely to drive the fear away than you are to chase the successes. So do you think that that's where like a mistrust is inherently built into a lot of these things?
And I completely agree. And, it's biological. I mean, we're not supposed to trust, you know what I mean? Like centuries ago, we had to limit our trust. And I think we need to get rid of that mindset. We absolutely need to trust in trusting. It is absolutely uncomfortable. People will let us down. People will hurt us. People will take advantage of us. But the rewards of the 94% outweigh the risk of the 6%. And we'll throw words out, especially in this industry, about innovation and creativity and working forward and navigating, the complexities that we face. And I believe that we have all the talent to do that. And yet we expect them to do it in a box that was designed for the 6%.
It's so well said. I think that's a perfect breaking point. We're going to go to break, and afterwards we're going to talk more about the cornerstone of effective team building as a whole for you to be a leader with.
Sounds great.
Amazing. We're into our last segment with Phil Jewell today, and I want to talk to you, Phil, about what I believe sort of the cornerstone of any great team is, and that is effective leadership, as we've been going on with. Okay, I wrote down a question here. I'm just going to read it. You've led some teams across various countries and cultures. You are a Brit working in the Canadian Army, associated with the U.S. at different points. Right, leading all of these different people, cultures, people coming from everywhere in the world, as far as I'm concerned, right? What are some key takeaways from those experiences that you believe real estate professionals can apply to their business as the cornerstone of their team?
And it's a great question. And amongst those teams, I also led, teams from Afghanistan and teams from Nepal and so many different cultures and values. And I think that really is a segue into be curious and assume nothing. The way that my value set, my beliefs, my behaviors, my expected standards, I have no right to impose them on you. I have no right to assume that you have the same set unless we have an open, honest conversation about it. So the first thing that I ever do when I'm bringing a new team together is, even if we don't think we're from a different culture, we often are from a different subculture, is to have a conversation around, how do we show up when we're in bad moods? How do we communicate to each other? How do we manage the different behaviors, the different energies, the different personalities we have in this team? And almost develop, a common set of values, a common set of standards. I mean, often in the corporate world, they call this team charters, and I like that word. Sometimes people think, oh, team charter is just words on the wall. And I agree, you know, often it's not actually put into play. So for me, it's the conversation and the exercise of doing this. Spend the morning with your team, you know, use 8 to 10 questions as a discussion-based exercise and just get to understand how we like to show up, how we like to communicate, you know, how we can address issues of conflict, because conflict is something we have to embrace. We can't avoid it. It's going to happen. But not understanding the rules of our team, the values that we've all agreed upon, is where we, you know, get into quite a lot of negative conflict.
Phil, do you think that extends then to, like, setting a baseline in that particular way extends to goal setting for what that team is meant to accomplish further down the line as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think because I think that team charter is the foundation to anything. I think that is what helps build trust, for instance. You know, people often ask, well, how do you build trust in teams? And I often just, you know, throw the question back, well, how do you build trust in your personal life? Because our personal life is just made up of teams. As also, you have your family team, your extended family team, your friend team, whatever it is. And you've built trust amongst those people. And I think a foundation of trust is what allows us to achieve everything else. So if you don't have a foundation of trust amongst your team, if you go straight into goal setting and targets and stats for the next quarter, for the next fiscal year, whatever it is, you're going to get some good data, you're going to get some good targets, but you're not going to get buy-in. You're not going to get buy-in from everybody who needs to be at the table and buy into it.
Incredible. You mentioned a little bit of future-facing stuff there. So I want your opinion. Let's pivot a little bit. Your opinion about what leadership looks like over the next 5-10 years from impact leadership, and where you want to be able to take people in the future.
It's a great question. I think it's redefining or understanding that being a leader does not mean that you are the center. It does not mean that you are the most knowledgeable. It does not mean that you are the most successful. It does not mean that you had the most transactions over the last 2 years. That does not mean you're a leader. Being a leader means you can create an environment where others can really rise and shine and reach their true potential. And it's a specific, different skill set. It's embracing humility. It's, for the most part, leaving your ego at the door, although I think having an ego is important, because if we don't, we have insecure leaders who lead through fear, which is obviously has negative consequences. And really embracing that irrelevant leader's mindset where, my role as a leader should be to work myself out of a job, should be to make the team I lead so good that they don't need me. And that takes such a secure mindset to do that, because we fear that. We fear not being needed. Again, that's biological. We had to be needed in the communities centuries ago, because if we weren't, we were no good to that community.
Yeah.
But I think embracing that mindset is the leadership we need now and in the future.
Before we let the main audience go, I want to talk to you about the most fulfilling part of your day, week, month, year. What's the most fulfilling part about impact leadership in your life?
That's a great question. I think when I work with clients and I see them take a deep breath and they say, okay, I can just be myself. I don't have to emulate anybody else. I don't have to emulate this leadership figure that's being presented to me. There is no box to fit in. I can just be my true, authentic self. I think that when I see the pressure release in them and I see them, have self-belief in themselves, then, that's really rewarding, really fulfilling.
It's amazing. Phil, look into the camera over here. Speak to the Brokers Playbook audience. How does somebody get a hold of you? How do they work with Impact Leadership?
Yeah, so impactleadershipteam.com. I'm active on LinkedIn, and my new Instagram community is The Irrelevant Leader. So I'd love it if you find me and give me a follow.
Phil, thank you so much for joining us today. I know that you've agreed to stick around and speak on our extended version of the podcast as well. So for anybody looking to hear more from Phil, we're going to dive deeper into some of the things that Impact is doing right now. Join the Brokers Playbook community, where you'll find all of our extended podcast versions, all of the things that Phil is going to enlighten us to a little bit more, and all of the other content that we have available to you. So Phil, thank you.
Thanks,
and
Bobby.
for our main audience out there, I could listen to you go all day. So hopefully they join the community so they can listen to a little bit more.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Bobby.
Amazing.